meeting of the Tufton Borough Planning Board. The date is Thursday, March 21st, 2019. So I think many of you were here at the last meeting where we talked about sand pits, so a lot of this will sound very familiar. For those of you who are not, I'm just going to go into a brief explanation of what we're doing tonight and why we're all here. So, the town of Tufton Borough has had sand pits within it for 50 years, 60 years, 70 years, I'm not really sure how long. For almost all of that period, they were completely unregulated by the town. Oh yeah, and I should ask that if you do have a cell phone, please put it on silent. They were basically completely unregulated by the town. Changes in state law came around, which puts the burden of regulation higher upon the applicants as well as upon the town who issues the permits to excavate. So the reason we're here tonight is Tufton Borough, we are making the grand attempt to come into compliance with sand pit excavations, and those fall under a law called 155E, which governs sand pits within the state of New Hampshire. Basically, what we're doing is we're looking at existing sand pits that have been on operation to some extent, and we're going through a process called site plan review. This is not triggered because the sand pits are trying to increase what they're doing or because they came to us. This is because the town and the state have regulations that require us to go to them so that they can operate legally in the future. The long and the short is that what we're doing is documenting the confines of the sand pits as they are, the water tables and the elevations, and allowing them to continue to operate within those confines. Expansion beyond those confines, beyond the grubbed out area or the area where they have been working, would require a trip to the zoning board of appeals for a special exception, and then back to the planning board for another site plan review. So that's a brief description of what we're doing. There's a total of 5 sand pits tonight. What we're going to do is we're going to do some housekeeping items, which is just the planning board going through the minutes from the last meeting. And then the applicants will come up. The first applicant tonight is Fenton Barney over here. I will go through the lot, the numbers, such and so forth. We will look and make sure the application is complete. The applicant will present the application. The planning board may ask questions of it. At that point, we'll open the public session, and you can speak for or against the application, or just ask questions of the applicant or of the board. I would like to remind everybody we are neighbors and friends, and be courteous to one another, to the board, to the applicants, and the people around you. Other than that, before we get going, does anybody have any questions about the general planning board procedure or questions for the board before we get going? Sure, Jim.
I'm Jim Bean. I got my application together late. I apologize. My father started it. It's actually his name. He left, went to Florida for a month, gave it to me. I got sick, and then I went away, and I was away for a while too. I had it complete. I was wondering if you guys would consider reviewing it.
As long as we can get the notification to abutters done, legal requirement, in time before the deadline, which is Ann, do you remember?
Are we gonna hear it it's 22 days prior to the hearing. Are we gonna hear it on the 4th, or are we going to hear it on April?
How quickly would we be able to meet the abutter notification?
Tomorrow.
I mean, how quickly could we have that done in time for the 4th?
I could have it done for tomorrow. They need to go out tomorrow, I can do it.
And that would allow us to hear it at what meeting?
Oh,
At the
I
second-
can't
at
do
the
the paper
second.
though. It won't meet the requirements of the newspaper, sorry. So we have to hear it the April, hold on. We can, I mean, if you want to accept the application, you can accept it, but it'll be April 18th.
Yeah.
Jim, if it's okay with you, what we'd like to do is accept the application. We'll see if we can meet the abutter requirements and notification requirements. If we can, and we can meet the timeline, we'll be glad to.
Great. I appreciate
We'll
that.
do
I
what we
have
can.
a list.
Yeah, so if you want to just give that to Leanne, or
Okay.
we'll take care of it, or we'll do our best.
Should I do that now?
I would. Does anybody else have any questions before we get started? Nothing? All right. First up, consideration of the minutes. Did anybody see anything that needed to be changed?
I wasn't here, but I have one comment.
Sure.
It's towards the bottom of the first page. It says, set state of the town plow the road. And then it says, noting they submitted an email from me saying a driveway permit wasn't needed. He has a driveway permit. The email said that he needed to take a copy
Oh,
for
okay.
his file. It's on file at the town office, but he did have a driveway permit.
Leanne, did you get that?
Yeah, it's on file at the town office,
Yeah.
and then he does have an existing permit.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
One other thing I forgot to ask people, we have a lot of people speaking tonight, and if you could make sure you clearly state your name and your address if you're going to speak about anything. All right, first up is, oh, I'm sorry. Approval. I have a motion to approve the minutes with any changes.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
I don't think so.
Okay, first applicant is Fenton Varney. Let me just explain a couple of things. For many of you, this is going to sound very familiar. This is because Fenton had an application 2 meetings ago. And then a question was raised about whether abutters were properly notified. To answer the question, the abutter was not properly notified, which is why we are going to redo this from the start. There was also a question raised about notification of the Conservation Committee for sand pit excavations, site plan reviews, which is what we're doing under 155E. 155E requires notification of the Conservation Committee for the excavation permit application, which is the next step for the sand pits within the town. But just to be sure, we also notified the Conservation Committee for this as well. But if anybody's interested, 155E is available on the website. We probably have copies of it too. So. I'm sorry, I didn't interrupt you. So,
You got the point.
yeah, it's Fenton Varney Excavation Operation 3-1-24. We have reviewed the application, and the application is complete. The street address 29 Mountain Shadows Drive, Melvin Village, New Hampshire. Make sure I get this right. 29. Can I have a motion by the board to accept jurisdiction of the application? Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Fenton, please. Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
You need to appoint Gary.
Yep, excuse me one moment. I need to appoint Gary Claw as acting member for this meeting, as we are short one member. Do I need a motion?
No, just need to appoint him.
So for those of you guys that were here last time, this is the overall plan of land. This is 3124 is the lot number. The total area is about 26 acres. The area of excavation is about 1/3 of an acre, right up in here. And then the potential area to be excavated that's already grubbed out is about twice that. It's about 1.5 acres with this little checkered line that's around. Everybody in Mountain Shadows, you guys are familiar where we are, so. I guess I don't know what else, if anybody has questions, you guys have questions you want to ask of me? I mean, we've been through this last time. How do you want me to proceed?
I mean, in the previous meeting, we went through, our questions fairly well.
Right, I mean, if you guys have questions for me as the board, and then we could, if you want, ask the same questions in case somebody wasn't here.
Does anybody have questions for Fenton, or does anybody want 1 minute?
Yeah, we did, but
Benton, just like the last time, I assume nothing's changed and that you're here just to grandfather the pit, you know, and to meet we can meet the compliance in the town. In the past few weeks, you haven't had anyone offer you, you know, to excavate the side of the mountain or anything like that?
Oh, well, you mean as far as, besides mine using it? No.
Yeah, okay.
There's not that much there to excavate, no.
Any questions?
No, I have no question.
Can I have a motion to open up the public?
So I move.
All those- Okay, do any of the members of the audience or butters have questions for Fenton or questions for the board or request more information? Sure.
Yeah, you mentioned, oh, I'm sorry, Mike Jarvis?
Yep.
55 Mount Jarvis. This section 155E:3, are all these conditions supposed to be met, or are these conditions that you're alluding to that under a different circumstance they have to be met? The application for permit?
So there's two things.
I'm just trying to understand
Yeah, so-
what your discussion was earlier.
Yep, so let me break this down a little bit further, because it's interesting and it kind of takes a minute to wrap your mind around it. What we're doing here as far as the site plan review is to get these properties to the point where they can legally apply for an excavation permit by the town of Tuftonburg, to the town of Tuftonburg.
Okay.
In other words, we have to undergo this so that they can then fill out an application, the town application for an excavation permit, so then we can issue it. The application permit itself has conditions on it as well. One of those is a perk test. There
Is it, not to interrupt you, is it comprehensive for this section?
the application permit.
Right.
It's not super, it falls under the conditions of 155E,
Right.
the permit itself, but it's not pages and pages long.
Okay.
But this is kind of moving this to the point where they can get to that step.
What, I think what's missing is, 2 years ago, the town ordinance passed.
Right.
That said you had to come into compliance with sand pits.
Yes.
All the 7 sand pits that exist in town are grandfathered as long as you come in and do site plan review. So the 155 does not kick in until you go to get, in other words, we're pre-existing non-conforming. And the way that the ordinance was passed, this exists already. So this isn't about existing, it's not about 155. What we're defining and what he's alluding to is, this is the area that's already excavated, it doesn't show up right on this plan. The area that's stumped and grubbed beyond that, to the tree line, is what's being grandfathered in for future excavation.
Right.
Without having to get an excavation permit on the 155.
No, you would be required to get an
He will get an
excavation.
excavation.
You're gonna get
No
one.
issue with it.
Okay.
But not at this point.
You'll apply for an excavation.
Yeah.
But not to finish what we're doing tonight. That's
No,
the point.
no, no.
Right, that's the next step.
But on your intent to excavate, you've got
Right.
that section where it says permit number.
Right.
And that's how this all started. So
Right.
it's getting to the point that they can be issued an excavation permit so that they can put a number on their intent to excavate.
But again, it's pre-existing, it'll be conforming once we have the number. What triggered this is the town's never regulated the.
Right, I know the state wants everybody to come into compliance, I understand.
Right, but that's what this is about. So it's not full 155 to do what we're doing tonight. These are pre-existing non-conforming.
I'm probably gonna have something else, but I'll let somebody else talk.
It's not simple, so.
No, it isn't. It's confusing to say the least.
I mean, we brought a woman in from the state and sat down with us and talked.
Yeah, I
to
watched
us,
the video.
Yeah, for a long time about
Yep.
it, so.
Hi, Jillian Talley. I am 43 Mountain Shadows. I am actually the abutter to the property. My concern is I have 2 little kids. Trucks coming in and out. I know they won't be passing by, but my kids walk up and down those roads. They are 2 and 4. They see a big truck coming and they say, yay, a big truck, and they go towards it. Because that's what little kids do. And having, I know his intent isn't to have other people coming into that area, but having other people come into the area is part of the excavation business. So in the long run, is it gonna bring more into the area and bring more people into that road in that part of the area? Yes, absolutely, it is. And I moved from out of state here and just built a house on that property, not aware of what was happening. So it's kind of a tough situation for my family, knowing that now we're being put up against this. We just spent all that money building a brand new house. So.
The way, I guess the best answer I have for that would be, before this, before we do this, there was 0 regulation.
Mm-hmm.
Could take that 26 acres and dig, baby, dig.
Mm-hmm.
And now, by doing this, it's confined.
Okay.
So if your concern is, hey, this is gonna increase the amount of, traffic in and out, the actual answer is, and I'm looking at this kind of from the side,
Mm-hmm.
this is actually gonna limit the amount of potential traffic you would have without going back to the zoning board of appeals or such and so forth.
So my next question would be, how is it going to be monitored? How once the application is approved and it's grandfathered in, how is it going to be monitored to ensure that isn't happening?
So the conditions of approval we put on, one of the conditions of approval that we put on is that in the spring, when the snow melts, we actually will go around and we blaze the confines of the grubbed out area. So the chairman of the planning board, the codes officer, the applicant, and we have not had any abutters asked to go with us before. I don't think anyone would object to it.
Mm-hmm.
And we basically go around the perimeter of the grubbed out area, we blaze the trees, and then we mark them with tape, just tape. And then one of the other conditions are elevations. So we'll shoot several elevations on the pit. Steve went through this himself not too long. We'll shoot several elevations on the pit, and those give us, baselines of everything, of what it is. And then under 155E, under the requirements for the permit to excavate, you're also required to have a perk test. So the perk test determines the groundwater level, and you're not allowed to go within a certain distance of that groundwater level. So if compliance if you felt the applicant was outside of the compliance, say 5 years from now, you said, hey, I remember we blazed these trees, he's well outside of that, he's not following the rules, then you have 2 recourses. You actually have 3 recourses. One recourse would be town zoning enforcement. Come out and say, hey, this was the site plan, this is what it was proposed, this is what it's supposed to be in, which you'd probably get a good reaction. And then the second is, the state themselves. Both the state, regulations of 155E, and then of course the environmental standards, if there was an environmental something.
Because there's a stream that runs, I'm sure you're aware, runs right through my property, right into that line there, that I personally and my parents spent a lot of money to bridge over, and there was a lot of impacts to the environment that had to be determined by the state and the DEM and all those different departments that had to come in and approve applications and do things to ensure that we were in compliance with those regulations. So that's the other concern that I would say is, what about that stream? Because I know where it runs, and it runs pretty much right into where this pit is.
Yep.
Right, but it runs my way, not your way.
Correct, yes.
It's on the plan here.
Yes.
So, wetlands enforcement is obviously, the Department of Environmental Services. Surface water discharges, it fell underneath that, say hypothetically you had something major happen, falls under the EPA in 1972 Clean Water Act, and it's pretty serious stuff. They don't really joke around. The fines are $35,000 a day. So, from the EPA. So, there's, if for some reason, no offense meant by this family, but if for some reason, he sold this to somebody or he decided to take an excavator and start going crazy, there's a lot of different avenues you could explore to stop that, so.
Okay. Thank you.
I guess on that note though, just to maybe expand on that note, no one watches what's going on in there. He's got it posted. And I know there's just been a big to-do about that on a different subject.
Private property.
Right, it's private property, so when he's back there doing his thing, no one's overseeing what's going on in there. Just saying.
And the same could be true.
I mean, you're saying if he starts going crazy the next day, how are you gonna know that? You know?
And I think the answer is, and it could be on any piece of property in town.
Yeah, but this is gonna be a regulated pit that's grandfathered in. That you folks are saying that now there's controls in place to prevent certain things from happening.
If
The planning board can appoint someone to keep monitoring.
Okay.
the other thing that can happen is in case of enforcement, in case there was believed to be something going on, the codes officer, the zoning enforcement, which is Jack, actually has the ability to enter a property. There's a procedure.
No, I understand.
If it's
I
posted,
understand.
he has the ability to do that, so.
Just ask one further question. On this, because it just triggered my thought, on regulated property, if this gets passed and everything is, are people able to live on that property and that land? And have shelter? I ask because of other issues that we've been having, with people living on the property, that aren't supposed to be in there, because of where it is.
I don't believe there's anything that would stop somebody from building a house or using the property.
Okay,
So,
just wanted to.
yeah. At least I can't think of it. So,
Well, you gotta dig a hole to build a house, so.
yes, sir.
Frederick Conley, Blake Trail. My concern is the same, pretty much the same as this woman's here. When I first moved up here, I came up 2.5 years ago from Boston. I went looking around, looking for, I grew up in the city, raised in the city, retired from the city, and I was looking for peace and quiet. And when I came up here, when I first came up to this particular development, there was a sign outside that said residents and guests only, and there was a whole list of things, which has since been vandalized and it's gone. And number 11 on the CC&R state that the roads are not to be used in any manner inconsistent with its residential character.
That's covenants.
Yes,
We don't
exactly.
abide by covenants.
Okay,
We go
that's
by
fine.
zoning.
I'm new to this whole procedure, so just bear with me. The other thing with me too, the road being private, there's a speed limit that's enforced, not enforced, there's a speed limit that's posted, it says 15 miles an hour. That's laughable. People fly up and down that road. My whole side of my house is exposed to mountain shadows. I get Nagasaki and Hiroshima class clouds of dust that I'm choking on. I've got to keep my windows closed on that side of the house and on the back side of the house. And even then I got dust I got to clean up this thick every week. I'm sorry, I'm getting a little, because I've been dealing with this for 2.5 years. And that's not what I came up here for. I came up here to not have to deal with this kind of aggravation anymore. And my other concern is incremental creep, the camel's nose in the tent scenario. Again, the house is gonna be regulated, the house can be monitored, how is it gonna be enforced? It's private property. I mean, there's gonna be a balancing of the equities here. He has the right to avoid his property with best and highest use. But also, this is impacting negatively on the full use and enjoyment of my own property. And that's, pretty much how I feel about it. Those are my concerns. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Freddie Aponte, 30 Mountain Shadows. I put up right, I'm the first house that you hit when you come out of the pit. My question is, my house faces Mountain Shadows, my bedroom faces Mountain Shadows. If this was to go through, is there any time limits on this, or can trucks be pulling in at 11 o'clock at night, pulling out sand? Is there any regulation on time to have a little peace and quiet in my own bedroom?
The planning board has the authority to regulate the hours, and in the previous application, I can't say what the board would do on this application, but in the previous application for a sand pit that was approved, there were posted hours of operation.
So there would be, if this was approved, there would be hours attached to it?
I can't say how the board is gonna vote and decide, but in the previous application, there was hours posted. So it's not, I wouldn't look at that as an unreasonable request, to stretch the imagination.
Is it my understanding that Ben would be the only one that's escalating from that pit?
Well, he could legally have somebody else
But you,
I have no intent to, there's not that much sand in it.
right, from the last meeting we had, you were the only one that was gonna excavate from there, it'd just be your truck going in.
Right.
And it wouldn't be that frequent, from my understanding.
Well, in the last 4 years, I've taken 30 loads out of there in a 3-ton truck.
In the last 4 years.
Right, in the last 4 years. There hasn't been more than 200 yards taken out of there per year. I think this year, it might have been 250, and 100 of that, or 150 of it was to do the last of the underground on Lindsay Lane, which doesn't even count. So it was used on site. Some of it went to Don Griffin's, and to put all the vaults in for the electric. So it's not Ambrose's pit, it's never gonna be, there's not that much sand in it. The real use for this, most of it in the future, is just on site inside of Mountain Shadows, which is where the vast majority of it's gone already.
I think a fair question for you guys in Mountain Shadows would be, if most of this is used within Mountain Shadows, would you, as far as road restrictions, for instance, the town posts most of its roads in the spring, would you want restrictions placed upon the road to match the town's restrictions of most of the roads?
You can't do that on private roads. It's private roads.
You could put a condition of the dates.
Well, yeah, again, you're imposing limits on, it's not only the sand pit, and I'm gonna go pick up Mike again. Mike owns a 10 wheel. So you're gonna go posting, if you put a limit on me, that's a limit on him. He may not want that, because it's gonna put him out of business.
That's not true, because I mean, very frequently, and Jim Bean's not here anymore.
Yeah, I'm here.
All right. I mean, when and if I ever go out, it's late in the spring, and I always get permission from Jim, and it's very, very infrequent. I don't expose my truck to salt and sand and stuff, so I don't, that's not a,
But that's the whole point. The town road is posted going in there right now, and it's limited, what do you got, 10 tons on it? 9? Yeah, so it's irrelevant. The whole time the town roads are posted, nobody can get in and out of there either. It's already limited. You see what I'm saying?
Then there's no loss by doing it.
No, I mean, we match the town anyway, because you can't get there. It's one of those you can't get there from here problems. The reason you really can't put limits on private roads is the same reason there's no speed limit on private roads. The state law does not, it's private right of way. It's like me telling you you can't drive down your driveway, or you coming to me saying I can't drive a 10-ton truck down my driveway during mud season, even though the state road isn't posted, but you just put you're putting limits on private right of ways. You really can't do that. If you could, the state would put speed limits on private roads. But I don't. You see what I'm getting at?
I see, moot point, but I don't see the difference between that and.
Well, I don't, my point is, I don't care, because you can't get there anyway when the road's closed.
Mary Jarvis, 55 Mountain Shadows. Do the selectmen in Tufton Borough have to grant permission to use this private road for excavation purposes?
No.
Because some towns, they do have to have permission. And I also would like to ask, with the site plan review regulations, permitted to use a tax lot, what district does this particular lot fall into?
I believe it's medium density residential, if I remember right.
You believe it is, or you know it is?
Either medium density or low density.
Yeah, I'd like
depends
to
on
know
the
what
lot.
that is.
Share something.
In the front page. Here's the application. You got a front page application.
Right here.
It's in the spot.
Front of the application, the first page says the zoning
Yep.
district is LDR.
Low density
Low density.
residential.
Thank
Low
you.
density residential.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have? Yes, sir.
John Lauren, Parsons Ferry Circle. If this permit is granted, is there anything that can restrict Mr. Varney from operating a commercial sand pit on that land itself and mining out as much as he can on that 1/3 acre and then going to the next 1/3 acre?
Yes, he's limited to the confines of the groved out area. That's what he's doing.
Can you tell me when he was notified that he had to apply for the permit?
I believe Fenton was on the planning board at that time when the permit, when this started to trickle down through, so he's been aware of it for years.
Okay, because the part that was grubbed out at the back of the pit, where the trees were cut down, was done in November.
November of what year?
2018.
Last year.
Well, I can easily prove that's not true through Google Maps.
So part of what we do is we use Google Maps because
Mhm.
they are their date time. And that's also part of why we walk around and ways it.
Okay,
So we-
Mr. Varney also stated that he doesn't take sand out of there, that's just used for, in mountain shadows.
I didn't say that. I said most of what was in it was used in house.
At the last meeting, you said none of it, you said it all went down to the trench in Lindsay Lane.
This year when I hauled down there, most of it went into that.
This year?
Yeah, this year.
Okay.
There's
What
no
about-
restrictions on what I use the sand for.
Well, I've seen that white dump truck loaded to the top, go right out,
I said,
It can leave the site.
I think it's
uncovered.
my sand, John, I own it.
Yeah, you own it, Fenton.
I do.
You don't adhere to the covenants anyway, so
I don't have to, John. They're your covenants, they're not my covenants.
is that why you told me that you were gonna let hunters in mountain shadows and they're gonna have them shoot me first?
I
You
didn't
said
say
that.
I
that.
don't, all right, enough. Let's keep this about the application. Is there anyone else?
I do have one more question, I'm sorry. Have you posted a bond for the reclamation yet?
There's no requirement for reclamation bond.
No? No?
And first of all, about 75% of it is reclaimed by itself already. So, all you need is stabilize it. And then bark mulch it or just overspray it with anything to stop the erosion. And there's nothing eroding out of the excavation area because it erodes, the water's being held in the excavation.
I do have one more thing.
Yes.
It does state in here as far as, an abutter, my daughter, that he has to maintain I think it's a 50-foot buffer.
It's 50 if it's a butter who is against the
Right.
of 10.
I just wanted to point that out to make sure that that's adhered to. I know Fenton hasn't gone there yet. I just want to be sure that that doesn't happen.
Yeah, currently, this is the limit of the excavation area.
I know you had a big one.
This is the 50-foot setback, this
Yep.
is the daughter's property line,
Yep.
that's 50 feet. That's the limit of the future excavation, and that's not good material going your way. So that's about 80 feet from the property line.
Yep.
From this excavation area to where her house is currently located is 450 feet through the woods. So you're not gonna hear anything, you're not gonna see it.
Well, I would argue that point, because we hear you when you're in the pit or when your voice down there. So we do hear everything that goes on in there.
Could we hold that for a second? Could you just show me on that map where the right-of-way is in the back there that's in our MID?
Yeah. Actually, this one was.
Because that right-of-way is in my deed, and I want to ensure that that right-of-way isn't impacted by any future use of the pit. Because I do have a right-of-way in the back of my property.
Actually, the right of way is an easement, not right.
It is an easement.
And it's not the same, the right of way is defined entrance. So, this is the existing excavation area of mine. Yours, unfortunately, it didn't show up well. This is your boundary line right here.
Yep.
Okay. Where the right of way is defined is right here, what the easement is defined. It says the upper right hand corner if you read the easement, okay? This is where your house is, this is where your father's using as a, for his material and his well, I don't say it's excavating, but the material he's using. Okay, so the only issue with you using this easement is there's wetland right here and wetland right there, and you're gonna get a bridge to get across.
Right. But I want to make sure that access won't be.
No, that access isn't gonna be impacted, but to use it or to build a road in there, you gotta get across the wetland, so you're gonna build a bridge. Just like you did over there.
And I would argue that point too, Fen, because that easement is not outlined well enough on that document to say that that's where the easement
Says
is.
northeast corner. That's north, that's east, that's the corner. That's what it
Okay.
says, you signed it.
You signed it too.
Right, it says northeast corner. North and east, 50 feet.
We'll see.
In regards to the easement, you see where it is.
Thank you.
And that easement allows us access in there at all times.
Unless the easement specifically says otherwise, yes. If you're the dominant parcel and his is the serving parcel, then,
So we can just drive in when we feel like it.
yeah, absolutely.
If you
Unless
get the
there's-
permits to build a road up there, you can.
No, again, setting conditions.
Well, I mean, well,
It says residential use.
God.
You got a residence up there? It says residential use, you signed it. Go read it.
So to answer your question, they're virtually impossible to get rid of right-of-ways or easements.
Yep.
Unless you own the
I know.
dominant parcels.
Yep.
Anybody?
I got one question.
Yes, sir.
James Pisano, 9 Partridge Ferry. Now, our covenants doesn't have anything to do with this pit because our covenants say no business allowed in Mountain Shadows. So, is this not a business?
Towns are regulated by zoning and RSAs. Developments are regulated by covenants.
All right,
So
we have,
you have to, well, bad word, but fight this. I'm sorry, I lived in a place that had covenants,
Yeah,
and that's the way it
But
works.
yeah, what you have to understand is, they have a set of covenants that only apply to lots 1 to 22. That was the original Mountain Shadows from 1973. There's a second set of covenants for all the lots that I've developed since then. My covenants apply to my lots, their covenants apply to their lots.
but you
I
gotta
own the
get
roads.
through our lots to get to your.
No, I don't, I own the roads,
Oh, yeah, I forgot.
but I do.
All right. Yep, you fix the roads, you own the roads.
Shared responsibility.
Yes, sir.
Freddie Aponte again, 30 Mount Shadows. My question to you, Fenton, is you say that you have a separate set of covenants. I haven't seen, I've requested, Gino requested.
They're on, they're registered at the registry of deeds. You can go right online, it's a declaration under my name.
Okay,
They're there.
okay, thank you.
It was done back in 2008, I think, was the final set of documents.
And it's just that the last time he said, just call me and Gino.
I can send them to you, but I mean, they exist and they're registered. As a matter of fact,
I can
your
send
daughter
you-
has them.
My daughter has it, she has it
Well,
listing in
the
there.
lots that we have.
I can email that.
Can you
We
send them to
scan
him?
them.
So, would you mind sending it to him?
No, not at all.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Joe Olds, Parkersbury Circle. What I'm concerned with is the roads are horrible enough. Fenton claims he owns the roads. So can you imagine what these roads are gonna look like a couple of years after 10-wheel trucks bring load after load of gravel through it? What's he gonna do to adjust the roads? And then as soon as you say, he goes, oh, we own the roads. So we don't want 10-wheelers going back and forth here. This is a private residential neighborhood. That's why we all bought in here. We didn't buy to have a commercial sand pit. Hauling, and like, as you know, dust goes everywhere, you can't keep the windows open. What's those roads gonna look like after 1 year with a mud season, 10 wheels coming through there? You lose a small Volkswagen in there.
Well, you already have a sand pit. This is seeking to define and limit it. So this, as far as the traffic to the roads, would be less than if we did nothing.
Again, it goes back to, I own the roads. Well, when are you gonna fix the roads? Because we're still waiting.
Yes, sir.
Just Frederick Conley, Blake Trail again. Like I said, when I went through there, I went through there and looked, and there was nothing to indicate there was any commercial activity other than what was, obviously, there were lots to be sold, houses to be built. I accept that. But there was nothing to indicate this was going on when I looked. And I looked several times. So this past year, and Mike can attest to it too, I spent about $60,000 improving the outside of my property. And I'm choking on dust every time somebody flies up and down that road. I mean, it's intolerable. I'm upset about it, and every time I complain, there's nothing you can do about it. So I'm not happy.
I'm just giving my opinion. The roads are a mess. They're a mess today with no trucks going in there and no trucks going out there. Mountain Shadows has a problem with the roads. Everybody knows it. There's dust in the summertime, whether it's a 10-wheeler, whether it's a car, whether it's a Bobcat. The roads need work in the subdivision, no doubt. But they're shot today. So, I mean, I don't know if 10-wheelers are gonna make it any worse or not, but it's a mess right now. So, we have a problem as an association with our roads.
You don't think 10-wheelers are gonna ruin them roads more?
I don't know. I think they're already in bad enough shape that they need to be, they need to be dealt with. They need to be compacted. You shouldn't have ruts this big coming into a beautiful development. I'm building a brand new $500,000 house.
I agree with that.
My wife's got a brand new beautiful white car, and we pull in there and you go down Lindsay Lane, and Lindsay Lane is way worse. I mean, we're sinking in mud this deep. So it's the roads themselves need attention, and maybe as an association in the spring we can all talk about it, because I agree with you. I've been out there trying to sell houses, and people are turned off about even coming in there
Absolutely.
to buy because of it. So, it's a bigger problem than the sand pit. It's a big problem for the entire neighborhood and the Vatican.
Does anybody have any other questions? Want to add anything? So, I have a motion to close the public session. So moved. So there's a number of conditions that we've been adding to, talking about adding to all of these applications. I just want to run through them as far as the sand pits. And some of these have kind of been tweaked as we're trying to make sure we get this exactly right. And these are just conditions we're talking about for all the sand pits. So then we'll go into the discussion. One being compliance with RSA 155E. Now, in the past, we've talked about perk tests and things like that. It's specifying those exactly, but compliance with 155E covers the perk test plus everything that's in 155E. So it seems to me that it's cleaner to just say, rather than this or that or whatever, just to say compliance with 155E. The site plan shall include a note that this approval does not provide for any alleviation of any required state permits for purpose of sand and gravel operation or grandfathering any gravel pit activities that are outside the normal gravel pit excavation operations. In the past, it's been hours of operations shall be Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. through 5 p.m., and Saturday, 7 a.m. through 12 p.m. The area excavation shall be identified and blazed by the owner, codes officer, and planning board chairman, and a note under the plan will be added depicting such. The applicant shall submit photographic inventory of the excavation area. Elevation shall be marked and depicted on the plan, and that's what we talked about, shooting several elevations. Obviously, this time makes that a little difficult, but that's a condition of approval that we've done in the past. So does anybody on the board think that those do not fit in this case?
I think some of these suggestions are very good. And I think the hours of operation are also good. You've got a neighborhood that's gonna grow more and more as time goes on. So,
I did drive in there. It's a beautiful neighborhood, by the way. Haven't been in there in years.
Yeah, you should drive in and out, so it works.
Clearly, clearly residential, high-end neighborhood and such and so forth. I had two thoughts. One of them I mentioned just to match the road closure for the town roads. And my thought on that was just so that if you're locked out of, town roads, maybe not you, but, somebody says, well, I'll work within the subdivision and,
Yeah, I'll agree to that, 2 posted weight limits.
Okay. So that might be something the board should talk about adding, weight limits on within the mountain shadow roads, or sorry, road closure to match town road posting, so, and by saying that, what I mean is that if the town road is closed, a new road is closed, then mountain shadows for this operation would be closed to.
Yeah, at 9 tons, which is not my white pickup truck before everybody gets hysterical, okay? It's a 10,000-pound truck, 5 tons, so don't start calling anybody. I
So-
still have to get in and out of there, and the little white box van that goes in and out of there is about 6 tons. So that's the problem when you start putting restrictions on private roads. I don't want to listen to a bunch of BS and phone calls, because I'm not gonna deal with it.
Okay. Let me clarify, the reason I say that is because this is the only sample we have that is within kind of a private development, so to speak. And so what I would try to avoid with that, and Fenton seems agreeable to, is, if an excavation contractor cannot work on town roads, they'll usually look for jobs that allow them to work because they have bills and things like that. So the tendency is to look for jobs that are on, Route 16 or places where you can continue to operate. And it would be tempting to go and say, all right, well, let's work with our mountain shadows, I have a job. And you can imagine if you had a fully loaded 18-wheeler, not 18-wheeler, dump truck, what would happen on your roads right now. So I think it's kind of a reasonable thing to put on, and Fenton seems agreeable to. And the only other thing I noticed is that I would make as a suggestion, I doubt you'll have any objection to, is that it's a beautiful neighborhood and the character of the neighborhood is very high-end, and just taking the end of the driveway and having one of your guys do a gate that kind of matches the rest of the neighborhood.
You can't gate it because they have right away.
Okay.
Right away through your pit?
Easement.
Easement.
Which you could get it if you gave us a key.
Yes.
If you guys want to, I'll be happy to gate it. If you guys want to use it yourself, then fine.
Just something.
There actually is a gate there, it's just open.
I've seen the homes you build, they're beautiful. Something that, kind of.
Oh, yeah, there actually is a gate, but because of the snow plowing, it's open.
Okay, just, country looking, matches the road.
Yeah, I think the goal is not to keep people out.
What were the hours of operation again? I'm sorry.
7 to 5.
7 to 5 weekdays, 7 to 11 on
7 to
Saturday.
12 Saturday.
7 to 12.
Exactly. We didn't have a printer, so I can take a picture of it. Did anybody on board have anything, or?
It's just that he has to contact a spill company, and that has to be posted on the permit when the permit's posted on the site, in case something happens or someone's there and sees something, they're allowed to call that spill company, and he has to take care of that. That's part of the excavation permit.
And that's covered under 155.
Correct. So we have one other pit that's permitted in town, and they have a spill company on theirs. They've had no issues, but that's what that's for.
I'm sorry.
I think he,
We
Trevor
closed-
Con- oh, I'm sorry,
we
okay.
closed
I
the-
got part of this right through, I'm sorry.
Anybody? No. Okay. Well, if that's the case, I would like to hear a motion that we approve the application with the following conditions. Compliance with RSA 155E. Site plan shall include a note that this approval does not provide an alleviation of any required state permits for purposes of sand and gravel operation or grandfather any gravel pit activities that are outside of normal gravel pit excavation operation. Hours of operation shall be Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. and Saturday, 7 a.m. to 12 p.m. The area of excavation shall be identified and blazed by the owner, codes officer, and planning board chairman, and a note on the plan will be added depicting such. The applicant shall submit a photographic inventory of the excavation area. Elevations shall be marked. Elevation shall be marked by applicants. How did we phrase that before? With codes officer?
Yeah, all three of us actually go back.
Elevation shall be marked by the applicant with the codes officer and planning board chair. The other two requirements are operations of sand pit operations of sand pit will be limited within Mountain Shadows development during periods of town road posting to match town road posting weights and restrictions. Okay.
Yeah, I got one more condition I want to add in there. If I want to go in there and use my pickup truck privately to take a little sand out anytime, in my house or something else, that's allowed, okay? Because I don't want, if I want to go work on my own driveway, it's Sunday morning, and I want to use my truck to go get 2 or 3 yards of sand out of where I store it, 2 or 3 yards of road gravel, that's personal use, that's not commercial, you gotta be careful. Okay? So I need a personal use exception, and it won't be 10 loads on a Sunday. I don't want to run up there and grab a half a yard and start listening to it, I'm not gonna deal with this. Personal use, not commercial.
Then my concern is we're gonna complicate something by putting that in there.
Well, I think you are by putting the restrictions on, because it's just not getting used that much. That's the point, but it's still private property, and it's my private property. And if it's not a commercial use, it's me hauling out of there. You know, if I drive a Bobcat up there, put a couple of yards in the back of my truck on Sunday, I'm not gonna sit there on Monday and come visit you. I'm just not gonna deal with it. Because I mean, we'll end up in court over that one. I'm not threatening you. It's just it's private property, and I'm gonna go use it.
Well, all pits are private property.
Right, but it's private use. You gotta be careful. It's not a commercial use.
I don't.
This is making it a commercial use.
Not the entire piece of property.
No, just this staked out area.
But,
I think we're splitting
well, that's
hairs,
fine, we'll see how it works out.
but just for the sake of it. if Fenton went in and had his pickup truck and he took a load of sand out
Well,
of
it'd
it
be my white truck, but if I took a load of sand and a load of gravel out of there,
on a Sunday, is everybody good with that? Rather than mix this up, the approvals and such and so forth?
My question would be is, who do we make the complaint to if it's not, if it's more than that, you know, if it turns out to be a truckload? Who's gonna enforce that?
It would be a condition of approval would be a violation of it, so you go to the codes officer or selectman.
So we would go to the code office?
Yeah, but, I mean, can we all agree just because,
you can't just all agree at a public meeting. If you're gonna do it, put it in writing, because it won't back up.
okay. All right. So, the other condition was Fenton that you do a gate that matches the neighborhood.
Yeah, if you want a gate, I'll put the gate up. But I mean, I don't tend to like gates, but that's okay.
And obviously you would, you know, in order to conform with the easement, they would need access to it. So. Okay.
And I guess one of the other ones was a waiver on the.
Oh, yes. So you're gonna ask for a waiver?
Request a waiver for the full
Yep.
city.
One of the requirements of site plan review is a stamped plan by a surveyor. This property has been surveyed before, but Fenton does not have a stamped plan, so he is asking for a waiver of the stamped plan, stamped survey plan, worth noting that all of the applications so far will require that waiver since no one is doing the full survey so far. So, can I have a motion to approve the waiver? And a second. So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. And then can I, if the board chooses to, have a motion to approve the application with the conditions that we listed out? So moved. Second. I'll second. All those in favor? Aye. There we go. Okay. That was good time.
They have a budget of about $10,000 a year. I pay $3,800, everybody else pays $400. And last fall, we decided not to go for the road for public. So we're not gonna fix it in the fall. The roads in some areas, you know, is all the association. We all, like I said, I pay on 9 lots that aren't in the middle. And so there's a lot of money in that, but they gotta fix it in the fall, and they didn't fix it in Lockett. They had a fall meeting and decided not to do it.
Well, and the other side of this is, we're at the worst part of the year right now.
Right, the next 3 weeks is.
Well,
You guys, we've got a lot of applications. All right, so the next up is Fred Sargent, tax map 32-2-4, and tax map 32-2-6. Site plan review application for an excavation operation. And Fred, I think you're gonna have Mr. Casella speak for you?
yes.
Okay. Leanne, can you put in minutes that Fred said it was okay? Mr. Casella?
And there's a letter of operation on authorization on file.
Even better.
See you then.
Bye, guys.
Bye, Ben.
Love you.
Have a great night.
So, just remind us, because you guys have multiple points. 32-2 and 32-4 are,
4 and 6 are Fred's.
Okay, so that's Fred's section.
12 is Mary Jane's.
So
Yeah.
32-4 is the lower portion of Mary Jane's essentially, do I have that right?
Yes, it is.
Yes.
32-4 and Mary Jane's are together. So we'll do the 32-2-6, the Savage Crossing.
So technically to do this right, we're gonna have to treat them all separately.
Okay.
So we'll have to accept jurisdiction over each one and so on and so forth. So why don't we start with 32-2-4 because it's the lowest number and that way it's easy for me to keep it in order. And the street address is, for this by the way, is 258 Mountain Road, Tuftonboro, New Hampshire. We have reviewed the application. The application was complete. Can I have a motion for the board to accept jurisdiction over the application? Second. All those in favor? Aye. They do have a waiver request, which is, same as the last one, waiver is requested for section 4.3.3 of site plan review regulations to allow the review of submitted documents without requiring the stamp of a licensed land surveyor or professional engineer. It would be a fairly heavy burden to survey. I mean, this has got to be altogether 90 acres or something like that. And I would ask for a motion to approve the waiver as requested.
So move.
Second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Great. All right, you're up.
Okay, so we are on 32-2-4.
32-2-4.
Okay. So this is on Mountain Road, access off 258 Mountain Road. It's two pits being operated cooperatively. Fred's land is this 23-acre plot, and Mary Jane's land is this 5-acre plot. So a portion of the pit as a whole is on Mary Jane's and a portion is on Fred's. And it's outlined as approximately 2.5 acres on Fred's and almost equal on Mary Jane's. Not quite sure what else we're supposed to be saying.
Is there going to be an agreement between the two of you? Because obviously there's setbacks from lot lines. So you have an agreement drawn up between Mary Jane and Fred. I know that it's one now, but something has to be drawn up just to, because it's a 10-foot setback from lot lines on pits. Granted, it's already dug. It's already there, but it just has to be something in place, that's all, because there are separate lots.
We can put it in as a condition.
So.
Okay.
I don't think it'll be a problem.
Now, there is the Carlton pit butts both Mary Jane's and Fred's. And we do have an agreement with Mike Carlton because there's a berm left on the property line to mutually split that, divide that line to the property that it belongs to. Get that berm lowered so that.
Yep. Let me elaborate that on a little bit. You guys probably remember, when they came before for a preliminary, basically, this would go, if they didn't do that, you would have flat, and then it would shoot up 40 feet, and then it would come back down again, and basically you would have this rather large, unattractive mound. And the thought is that if the mound is excavated and then in reclamation this is all smoothed out, it's a much better final product than if you have, you know, I don't know, for lack of a better word, a giant wave of sand and then drop back down. So
There has to be a legal written agreement between the two parties to allow that to happen.
And they provide it.
Yep.
So that, but that's one thing the board has to look at, you know, is everyone okay with doing that? So. And that's probably something, since all of these lots are kind of together, we should just talk about.
That one there is not going to happen until Mr. Carlton comes in with his full application, and that one can be acted upon, but we can do the one between Mary Jane and Fred now, I believe.
I personally think that the end product is better that way. I think that it's a more desirable piece of property, it'll be better looking, I don't see any downside to it whatsoever, so I don't personally have any objection, so. But I don't know if any members of the board feel differently about that.
Doesn't block a view to a public road.
No.
No. Doesn't matter.
Okay.
You can't see that from 171 at all. You can't see it from the side of the crossing road either.
But we have a beautiful view of Gunstock.
So, the border is pretty well defined. You do have Google photos over time that
Rick, just like when
show it pretty accurately.
we talked about, you're gonna get a condition that it'd be internally draining, and if there's an area where, the pit is gonna slope off in main direction, you will have to just trench it or burn it, or make it so that the water stays within the pit.
Yeah. Anybody has any other questions?
Anybody on the board?
So, the limits, do a bigger plan.
Yeah, right here. Hold on, 82-2-4. This is the lower portion. He's got it right there.
That's it.
Let's see if we got. Yeah, right here. Full size. Signature block. He's got the north arrow. Yeah.
So on the lower side, Rich, on Fred's side, the bottom, the further south part,
Yeah.
how much for, it's gonna go to the existing excavation, that's gonna be it on that part? See that hashed line?
Yeah, that's the
around there?
perimeter of the existing.
That's existing right now, so that's it, it's not gonna go any further.
No, it's not going to be
So
expanded.
the only thing that's gonna be done further pretty much is the north side towards that shed,
Right,
out to that line with a hash mark,
yeah.
to bring all that down to the 690.
Well, it won't all go down to the 690. Around the perimeter, that's where we're
We're gonna slope it off
do
to
the
one.
sloping of
Yeah,
the
okay.
reclamation. So
Yeah.
the 690 is going to be the lowest point. This berm is, I think,
Just say what it is.
it was like 750
750
yeah,
carats.
is a high point.
Okay.
So,
This is the steepest right up here. This is gonna be 2 to 1.
This one won't be done.
Yes, this will be, this will all kind of be plain, because otherwise you got that.
Yeah.
pretty much the outside of this line that says the perimeter of existing.
Which says top of slope there, or the?
Yeah, that's where the access road to get to the
Yeah.
pit, and it comes down, it comes around to the
Okay.
low section. So this is all a downhill grade,
Mm-hmm.
and it gets lower and lower, so sloping, you know, it's gonna vary the height of the slopes.
If the board doesn't have any other questions, I'm gonna open it up to the board. Can I have a motion to open public session?
So, good. I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Does anybody in the audience, have any questions?
Yeah, I'm Gary Gideon, 279 Mountain Road, just west of Fred's land. Okay, I guess, just getting up to speed on what's going on here, so I guess, I think you answered my question, there's no further expansion gonna be going on in that, you're looking to reclaim the banks, is that my understanding?
Yeah. From where we are now, it's not getting any bigger.
Hmm.
It's, you know, right now, this as a whole is probably more than 50% depleted, so from here on out, it's gonna be the beginning of the end of things, you know.
So I think they answered the question. They do intend to take more material out.
Okay. I guess if I could come up to take a look at that. Again, I'm getting up to speed here. So, I guess my question is, will you have the existing pit in your banking? That's as far as you go?
Right.
Okay, because on the west side of the banking, there's a brook that comes down that, and that's not any further, you're not going any further that direction.
No, this is you here.
That was on the other side of the road.
On both sides.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this is Fred's piece.
Yes, right. Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions? All right, can I have a motion to close the public session?
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Members of the board have any questions or? It's been there a long time.
Been there a long time.
Okay, can I have a motion to approve the application with the following conditions? Compliance with 150, RSA 155E. The site plan shall include a note that this approval does not provide an alleviation of any required state permits for purposes of sand and gravel operation or grandfather any gravel pit activities that are outside of normal gravel pit excavation operations. Hours of operation shall be Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. and Saturday, 7 a.m. to 12 p.m. The area of excavation shall be identified and blazed by the owner, codes officer, and planning board chairman, and a note of the plan will be added depicting such. The applicant shall submit a photographic inventory of the excavation area. Elevation shall be marked with the planning board chair, codes officer, and applicant. One other, because this sand pit slopes kind of downhill towards what we talked about, that low areas where water may exit the pit be burned or trenched to make sure the pit drains internally. So if everyone, if I could have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. The next one is what the,
We're leaving the agreement between the pits is.
We haven't done that one yet.
we haven't done the other one yet. That's the uphill side.
Right.
So that's actually Mary Jane's.
Right.
Right.
Why don't,
2-12.
Yeah, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna switch to Mary Jane's pit. And the reason I say that is because they're right next to each other rather than jump around.
Yeah.
So we are gonna jump around. So that would be,
2-2-2-12.
okay, so next up is Mary Jane, I'm sorry. Next up is Mary Jane Sargent Casella. Project is site plan review for an existing pit, tax map 32-2-12. And the road address of the pit is
258 Mountain Road.
258 Mountain Road. Oh, it's right there. Just so everyone understands, this pit sits uphill of basically what we just talked about. Rick, can you turn that just so everyone can kind of... And one other thing, Mary Jane, does Rick have...
Rich.
Geez, I'm sorry.
Yes, he does have permission, thank you.
Yeah, it's right there. Does Rich have permission to speak on your behalf?
Yes, he does.
All right. Leanne, you got that?
Yes,
And you
just
have-
so you know,
Yes.
all the files have letters of authorization.
All right, I'm just trying to be clear. All right, the application is complete, and can I have a motion to accept jurisdiction over the application?
So, second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Okay, so this is basically just what we talked about a minute ago, except we're talking about Mary Jane's property here, which is that piece here. And again, it's marked out, it's existing. We have an agreement to split the burden with Mike Carlton for Mary Jane's portion.
Approximately how close is that top cut from Teresa's property?
Here,
Yeah.
well, the rubbed out area comes right, pretty much sort of, her pin is there and marked.
The excavation area is how close? Approximately.
Within 10 feet, about 10 feet. And her piece comes up to like a triangle point. You can see how it, well, from her pin, then it transfers on to Fred's land.
Right.
That's the access road. This is Teresa's lot here.
Right.
So that's her pin right there.
Teresa, you're okay with that?
I don't want him to come any closer.
That's what I was asking. So.
Yeah, I don't want any
Should be
closer.
about 10 feet, so.
Yeah, no closer. They said they assured me they wouldn't. So I'm like, don't
They're all
wanna go there.
family, so you trust them, right?
Yeah, I trust.
Anybody on the board have any questions before we open it up to the public session? Can I have a motion to open the public session?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Does anybody have any questions?
I have a comment.
Sure.
Steve Hunter, I'm not near any of these pits, but I thought it was interesting on this last approval you just gave, how you told them that they have certain working hours and they can't work Saturday afternoon or Sunday when in that same neighborhood we have a dump that's open. Excuse me, a transfer facility that's open all day Saturday and all day Sunday. And I thought that was very interesting, how you restricted the use of the neighbor, if you will, to that. Thank you.
Does anybody else have any other questions? All right, can I have a motion to close the public session?
So moved.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Does the board have any other questions for you?
No.
Just that
the agreement between the two, that's all. Now that this one's down.
Yep, all right.
Agreement between Mary Jane and Fred.
On the boundary. Yeah.
Can I have a motion to approve the application with the following conditions?
Grant the waiver.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Grant the waiver.
The applicant has asked for a waiver. The waiver is requested for section 4.3.3 of site plan review regulations to allow the review of submitted documents without requiring the stamp of a licensed land surveyor or professional engineer. Can I have a motion to grant the waiver? So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Can I have a motion to approve the application with the following conditions? Compliance with RSA 155E. The site plan shall include a note that this approval does not provide for an alleviation of any required state permits for purposes of sand and gravel operation or grandfather any gravel pit activities that are outside of normal gravel pit excavation operations. Hour of operation shall be Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. through 5 p.m., and Saturday, 7 a.m. through 12 p.m. The area of excavation shall be identified and blazed by the owner, codes officer, and planning board chairman, and a note on the plan will be added depicting such. The applicant shall submit a photographic inventory of the excavation area. Elevation shall be marked and depicted on the plan. Oh God, how do I phrase that? Excavation shall be marked and depicted on the plan, and elevations recorded by codes officer, planning board chair, and applicant. And the last condition was
Drains internally.
pit must be made to drain internally through use of berms or ditches or trenching. And
And the agreement between.
and a agreement between lot, let's put that,
32-2-4.
32-2-4 and 32-2-12.
and lot, agreement between the owners of lot 32-2-12 and 32-2-4 pertaining to agreement of
Pit setback.
pit setback. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All right, the next application is by Fred and Eunice Sargent. It's a site plan review for an existing pit, tax map number 32-2-6. Sargent's Crossing Road is the street address. Again, they are requesting a waiver. A waiver is requested for section 4.3.3 of site plan review regulations to allow the review of submitted documents without requiring the stamp of licensed land surveyor or professional engineer. We will have a motion about that after we accept jurisdiction. The application we have looked at and is complete, and I have a motion to accept jurisdiction over the application.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Can I have a motion to approve the waiver as requested? So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
So this one is basically when you drive into the dump, sorry, transfer station, everything on the left-hand side.
Okay.
So, good chunk of it, yeah.
There's a house there too, isn't there?
Yeah.
Past that.
It's a nice-
Right past the house.
All right, you're up.
So this is Fred's lot. The whole lot contains 82 acres. And a portion of approximately, again, I highlighted this hash line. That encompasses approximately 18 acres. A lot of that, or all of that area has previously been excavated at some point in time. This pit goes back into the 50s or 40s, or earlier than that even. Currently, there's sections of the pit that are currently being operated by, it's used mostly by local contractors. Fred will give permission for somebody to go in there, and they bring their loader in and take fill out. Now, I came up with this area based on Google Maps, and they have a tool to outline what you can see as would have been disturbed area. Now it's partially growing back in again, but it's relatively flat. There's an area up here that's used for dump storage and disposal, areas for where rocks being stockpiled. On Google Maps, it kind of looks like the pit, which it did at one time encompass an area down here, which is now town land. That's a recycling facility because it was subdivided out. So I know we have to keep, 50-foot setback from there, even though it was part of the pit as a whole years ago. And I think this line is pretty well marked. This on the original survey, which we have. So the exact boundary will be determined with us just because it's such a large piece. Doing that plotting, that's what it calculated out to be approximately 18.4 acres or something. I think you guys have.
What's the height of the area around this?
What's that?
What's the height of the area around it? It's not marked on.
The undisturbed area around the pit.
Yeah.
It's all pretty consistent with what another tool on Google is elevations.
Right.
Right.
So there's no elevations on the upper part, that's all. I'm just curious what the difference is between the upper and lower.
Up here.
Well, anywhere outside the hash mark.
It all kind of carries uniformly through. It's not like a big hole in the ground. It has some rises. I think
he's just looking for the elevation on the
The
top.
undisturbed area.
What is the elevation in the disturbed area?
Not where it's been dug out.
Right.
Up around the outside. What's the elevation up there?
they would be similar to the ones that are closest to that perimeter, like this is 700.
So there's no cliff, it's pretty tapered off to the edge.
It is, yeah, there's no high embankments around this at all.
I think it's mostly self-invested at this point.
Yeah.
It's been, a lot of that stuff's been there for a long time.
You know, in this area it goes 680 to 690, 697, this would be the higher side. So over this whole area, which is a large area, there's like a 20 foot elevation change over 18 or so acres. And that's consistent around the outside of this as well. Because I think the pit technically was bigger than what I have marked out, but
So it's pretty flat around the edges then, from the
It's- yeah.
excavated area to the tree area.
it is. These, but I don't know if you want to look at these or not.
Yeah, sure.
Pictures. So you can see clearly the power line section, that's a power line that comes through there. How it compares to the,
So they are, it's basically this whole chunk right here. actually, this does a nice job of showing.
This is an old one too, that's 90.
Yeah. This has changed. This stuff's been eroded. This is that, when we're talking about the original district of. But
So this is everything that's been filled, pretty much, and it's slowing down gently. There are little areas all through here.
Yep. So you can see that's,
Right.
and it's kind of self-adjusting. That's 99. Does the board have any questions before we open up the public session?
No, I think it's self-explanatory, everything.
Can I have a motion to open the public session?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Does anybody in the public have any questions about the application? Can I have a motion to close the public session?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Jack, you got anything?
Nope.
Can I have a motion to approve the application with the following conditions? Compliance with RSA 155E. The site plan shall include a note that this approval does not provide for any alleviation of any required state permits for purposes of sand and gravel operation or grandfather any gravel pit activities that are outside the normal gravel pit excavation operations. Hours of operation shall be Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. and Saturday, 7 a.m. to 12 p.m. The area of excavation shall be identified and blazed by the owner, codes officer, and planning board chairman, and a note on the plan will be added depicting such. The applicant shall submit photographic inventory of the excavation area. Elevations shall be marked and depicted on the plan and determined with the codes officer, planning board chair, and the applicant. Last condition, that the pit be completely self-draining and any low points be burned or ditched. So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Is that all of them?
Nope.
All right.
That is a considered patient.
Yep. Last application of the evening is tax map 17-1-6. Street address is Mountain Road. Probably does not have a sign number on it, so, okay? We have looked, the application is complete. Can I have a motion to accept jurisdiction over the application? So moved. Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
The applicant has asked for waiver, requesting a waiver for section 4.3.3 of the site plan review regulations to allow the review of the current documents without the stamp of a licensed land surveyor or engineer. There's actually two more waivers he's requesting, but why don't we vote on the first one? Can I have a motion to approve the application the waiver as requested?
So moved.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
He is requesting a waiver from 4.3.2 2C, the existing grades, drainage system structures, and topographic contours at intervals not exceeding 2 feet with spot elevations where grade is less than 3%. Adam was being very thorough on his waiver request. Can I have a motion to approve the waiver? So moved. All those in favor? Second. Sorry. All those in favor? Aye. Last waiver request is a soils map showing all soil types and delineating wetlands as defined by Tufton Borough zoning ordinance section 6. Perk testing to be completed in the spring. In regards to that, you will be required to do a perk test, as part of your application for the
Just can't do it
excavation.
now.
So, can I have a motion to approve the waiver?
So moved.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great. Adam, what do you got?
So it sits on a 117 and a quarter acres lot. 100 acres on the upper side is in current use, and 17 and a quarter acres on the lower side is not in current use as far as it goes. The pit, as it stands now, is by Google's map, laying it out, is 1.85 of acres. And it sits on Route 171, the entrance. There's actually 2 curb cuts to get into that particular pit. The upper curb cut is grown up with some small pine trees as far as to get into it. The lower is got gates on it.
Adam, and you have a DOT driveway permit?
I don't know as far as the information on that. I know that the upper side is had been okayed by the DOT when the property was laid out, when it was subdivided.
You probably have one then, but it's probably going to be a requirement that you have a DOT driveway permit, and would this require a change of use permit by the DOT?
Increased use usually. They usually will come out and look at it.
You might have a requirement for some more paperwork. I can't say until the board talks about it, but just so you know. It's not a big deal.
So basically, we're looking at getting the pit area grandfathered, because it's my understanding that you can't even personally take sand or gravel, rocks, anything, or put anything in that particular area if it wasn't still a pit, as far as it goes.
You'd actually be allowed, say, 1,000 yards? 1,000 yards per square.
Right, but you can't take it from the property. So it is then useless, as far as it goes. So what we were looking for is to keep that particular section open, to be able to remove, up to 1,000 yards from that. Over the last 7 years, we haven't even come close to 1,000 yards with that. There has been some local contractor that has taken gravel from that, but we've never reached the 1,000 yards or above as far as it goes. It has obviously several abutters, Ricky Thompson, Beverly Bruce, Alan Blazik, Rams Property Limited Partners, and Timothy Brown. And for the particular areas, and the town of Tufton Borough on the lower side. The particular area in question is depicted on the map. There is the different sections as far as heights that are on that, and I believe that you have that along with the Google Earth pictures, one from 2013, one from 2014, and 2018 as far as the area lies. huge amount further. If there's any questions.
You guys haven't used this much in the past that I can remember.
No. The most use that the pit ever had and basically used it up was when Pier 19 was built. All of the fill and rock for that road was taken out for that particular area. It's basically a personal use with a couple contractors now and then that take care of this.
Adam, is that the upper road that you're, upper driveway you were referring to there? Or is it? This is the gated one here. Right?
That's the gated one, and it comes in about.
Okay, so, yeah, all right. Thank you. He says the other driveway comes in about, I just wondered if it was just.
That's what I figured it was.
Yeah. It's something else.
Okay.
Does anybody on the board have any questions before we open it up to the public?
No.
Brian? Nobody? Jack?
The only thing I was looking at here was the setbacks off this road. Do they comply? Am I looking at that right?
Boy, I know you
There's a
can.
big berm there.
Yeah, it's a big berm, so there's a
Yeah,
buffer.
it's
Yeah.
high.
Okay.
It goes like this.
Yeah.
Yeah, we want to keep
And
it
this is actually a survey.
Okay.
This is actually where it is. So
Oh, I
it's
see.
further away.
Yeah, it is further away.
Yeah.
See the better copy.
This was Peggy up there.
Yep.
This is actually surveyed.
Okay.
Can I have a motion to open the public session?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Does anybody in the audience have any questions?
Yeah, you go first.
I guess I'm it. My name is William Denley. I'm an attorney from Wakefield, New Hampshire, and I represent Mrs. Beverly Bruce in this matter. A couple of comments that I would have with respect to any pre-existing non-conforming use. And that is, of course, that it doesn't lapse. Because if it does, then the whole protection and the grandfathering of it goes away. So the first thing I'd be concerned with was whether or not, and to the extent that this pit, you said it's been used very little, but to the extent there was non-use, that pre-existing non-conforming use, of course, goes into the air and is no longer available without the full site review that we would normally expect. The other concern that Mrs. Bruce has revolves around the wetland nature of the pit, given the size of the lot. We got a little tiny little piece down here that we can take its sand out of. But it's a big lot, it's got a hill behind it. Undoubtedly, we've got streams, we've got wetlands, we've got all kinds of different soils and fauna and so forth that would be required in a full-blown site review, and ultimately could be required in this, notwithstanding whatever this board chooses to do. This project is big enough to trigger the jurisdiction of the Army Corps of Engineers. And the Army Corps of Engineers could care less about whatever we care about here. Their concerns are so far removed from what ours are on a local level. For instance, they will come in and require a certified person to do soil testings and all kinds of different water testings. They have a PhD after their name, and they issue reports with respect to all of these different water issues given the size of that property, to include matters as crazy as the number of polywogs that might have found their way into some of these wet areas. And once those have been identified under that particular agency, it's Katie bar the door, full-blown site review, and tell us how you're going to save the frogs. And if the applicant isn't prepared to do that, they'll completely shut the project down. Doesn't matter. We got polywogs turned into frogs. Frogs are protected under their jurisdiction, and it becomes a full site review that ultimately will fail. So a tiny little project like this can find its way into that channel very quickly. And so the question is, how do we try not to end up there? And I would suggest that you do that by addressing whatever concerns might be of some of these abutters. You know, they're big property owners. These are their neighbors, they're their friends and so forth. They don't mean to cause trouble. But it's not as simple as reciting that statute over and over again. It's not.
So what are the concerns?
Well, I think the biggest concerns are traffic. You know, the explanation is that we're going under a pre-existing non-conforming use. I'd be of the opinion, the legal opinion, that as that use has diminished, then the grandfather nature of it diminishes. You can't go back and say, well, 30 years ago we were taking, you know, gazillions of yards of whatever out of here. What this gentleman is saying is it's a small minor operation. We're taking a little bit out, and we'd like to take advantage of the pre-existing non-conforming grandfather to do that. And I don't think my client has any real objection to that, but we would want the permit written in such a way that it made clear what the nature of the use that was going to be considered to be grandfathered.
I guess it's a permit for an excavation, you know, a sand pit.
No, I know that's what he's asking for. Like I say, you may end up in regulation land anyway. At a minimum, before you grant it, it needs to be subject to, or if you're going to grant anything, it needs to be subject to wait till the snow clears, wait till all the wetness clears, and then at least have some requirement that somebody take a look with respect to the streams and so forth that are crisscrossing, if that's the case of this property.
So we're not relieving him of any burden of, we're not relieving him of any burden of, or any of the applicants so far, of any burden that the state may impose upon them. And the state is the one who enforces wetlands and such and so forth.
Well, they're one of them. Correct. You've got the Army Corps who has made it very clear they don't care what the state says.
Sure.
They see polywogs. Watch out.
Well.
So I guess that's the only concern that my client has. Not trying to stop somebody from, you know, as this is advertised, it's a very minor operation.
Why don't we see, you know, we'll chat, we'll go back and forth, and I'm sure that whatever the concerns are can be alleviated.
So each year we've filed for excavation.
Well, it's an intent.
Paperwork, as far as the intent to excavate, and turn in the proper paperwork every year for that. This year we were told not to do so because this meeting would have to take place to take care of that.
We need the permit number for
Right.
it, yeah.
So we couldn't get a permit number without going forward through this.
If I may just speak to a couple of things that I heard from the attorney here. The process that we have is applying only to existing pits that have been in active operation continuously. And and it applies only to the area that has been opened up so far. So the rest of this property back here
Can't be touched.
can't be touched. Only the area that's currently open.
I think most of it's in current use anyway.
There's 100 acres that's in
But
current.
changing current use is easy.
Yeah.
So all I'm saying is, in any of these pits, we're just dealing with what has been opened up in the past and previously excavated or grubbed out so that it could be excavated. Anything beyond that would require going back to the zoning board, going through the whole process, getting approval from the zoning board, then coming for a full site review with a lot more different things than what we're looking at here.
It would also likely trigger a state alteration of terrain, and at that point, everybody gets involved.
So it's, the intent is to allow an operation that has been traditional there to continue in a similar manner in terms of scale and scope.
Within the confines of where they've been.
What's already been opened up.
It's not to give anyone free rein to.
Go further than what's been opened.
I understand that. My, far as the nature of prior non-conforming uses.
Well, he has documentation of continuous use in the filing of his excavator.
If he didn't, he wouldn't be here.
He wouldn't allow it. For instance, we had a gentleman, Mr. Carlton can tell you that he did not, and we did not allow him to fall under an grandfather use. And it would be much more advantageous for him to have fallen under that, but we could not because he didn't have documentation.
So it was on a yearly basis, do they say how much they excavated?
Yes.
Yes, because they track it for taxes.
Oh, yeah. that's
So
what
they
they
tax
pay.
it as sales, so, yeah. Does anyone else have some? Mr. Blaze?
Yeah, Alan Blazik, 381 Mountain Road. The current owners of the property have been pretty respectful about what they're doing. And Moody, for instance, takes a load here or there. And my biggest concern is I got some yellow trucks, big dump trucks that go to his place that have almost run us over more than twice, maybe 3 times. I'm concerned about, but I don't think he will, but I'm concerned about all of a sudden you open that pit again and I got double the amount of trucks that are going by me already and they really don't pay attention, you know, and so, you know, as long as Andy's gonna, if they're taking, you know, I don't know how many yards you come, but 10 truckloads out of the air, I don't have a problem with it. It's only if they open it up and all of a sudden I got a big operation going again, like double the amount of trucks, I'm not interested in that.
Well, if he were to, let's hypothetically, if he were to open the floodgates, you know, just say, all right, there's a massive project going on somewhere, he would exhaust this in days.
Yeah, I suspect that's the case. It's just, you know, I'm just here to express it and say, I don't want it accidentally all of a sudden.
I'm just saying that looking at the topography, if he was to open this full bore, this would be empty, exhausted, and be due for reclamation in a matter of days. It's just not a big reserve. The area that's opened up isn't a large reserve.
Well, and what he's actually taken out there is not really premium material anyway, so it's not a huge demand for, so. That's all I got.
Does anybody? Good. Okay, I have a motion to close the public session. So moved. Second. All those in favor? Aye. What does the board have for questions? I know there's a question on the berm and the front.
No, Jack's map kind of really
They do that.
depicts that very well because it's quite a distance.
There was a survey done on it.
Yeah, I was just gonna say,
And it shows that it's actually further.
distance on that is pretty good. And we want the berm to stay.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
Or he has.
right.
Yeah, that's what outside the confines of his original workage.
Yeah, you know, anywhere with a berm, large trees that obviously aren't gonna be taken down because you would be getting further into.
If I remember right, this all internally drains, meaning that the low point is outside the entrance, but we'll probably put a restriction of, if there is a section that is, you know, where it's coming outside of the pit, that it be ground or drain or something of that nature.
And part of this, the water table has been.
It's the condition of the condition of the permit will be that the acid perk test, you can't enter in that it's 5 feet of water. But that's
Then
part of
you want how much you
150,
can take
that's
out.
part of 155.
Okay. No, I'm good.
The only difference on this one would be the driveway.
Yeah, and it may just be a change of use or intensification of use. So chances are you have a DOT permit, but basically the DOT says that if you change the use on the property, or if you're going to intensify the use, you know, substantially, which this really isn't, but because we're going through a site plan review, one of the things we do is driveway permits and we look at. So one of the conditions that I'm going to propose, and the board will talk about one, is that you contact the state, see about DOT, what you're applying for a DOT driveway permit, and tell them, you know, what you're doing, and they may say, all right, that's what it was originally permitted for, or they may say, hey, you need to get, you know, we're gonna come out and do a change of use or intensification use, and they'll modify the permit itself, and then when you get that, or you get a letter saying you're good, just give it to us. Anybody? Oh. Can I have a motion to approve the application with the following conditions? 1, compliance with RSA 155E. The site plan shall include a note that this approval does not provide for any alleviation of any required state permits for purposes of single gravel operation or grandfather any gravel pit activities that are outside of normal gravel pit excavation operations. Hours of operation shall be Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. and Saturday, 7 a.m. to 12 p.m. The area of excavation shall be identified and blazed by the owner, codes officer, and planning board chairman, and a note on the plan will be added depicting such. The applicant shall submit a photographic inventory of the excavation area. Elevations shall be marked and depicted on the plan determined with the codes officer, planning board chairman, and the applicant. Last condition would be DOT driveway permit reflecting intended use.
What about drainage internally, dude?
Other condition would be draining, any, that the pit drain internally or ditching or burning be added to cause all water to be held within inside the pit, internally within the pit.
So,
Second. All those in favor?
aye.
That was the last application for the lastly, there are no discussion items or other business. The only question would be, does anybody have any questions for the planning board about procedure, planning board activities, or pretty much anything? Next meeting is
April 4th.
April 4th, 7 o'clock at
Town office.
Make the motion to adjourn.
No.
Hold on.
So,
I said it cleared.
I don't think, was there a motion that?
You're not the bad guy,
Minutes,
I heard.
was John
Yes.
confirmed? Oh,
Yeah, we did.
Sorry.
You were thinking that.
Well, no, I was talking
I just want to
As I said, hold
I need you to remove that stuff. Wow, pieces. I can't hold it. It was in one piece before you hit it. Well, you know, I'm supposed to have it back. But the guy's father died, so I think it's a truck guy.
Matt, are we still in session?
Got a motion to adjourn. So moved. Second?
They don't get that.
All those in favor? Aye.
Thank you. Thank you.
I thought we did, but.